الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. Today, before we begin the class, I think it's important for us to be aware of what's happening in the Muslim world. And many of us take what they call an apolitical stance to everything. So we say we don't get involved in politics, whatever that's supposed to mean. And part of this is a direct result of 9/11 and not wanting to be painted as terrorists and not wanting to be considered to be militant and these type of things. Because we don't, as Muslims, support wanton violence and killing of innocent civilians and those type of things. And so to distance ourselves, I mean, perhaps a person goes too far to the opposite extreme. Islam is a deen. It's not a religion. It's not something we do just in the masjid. It's the way we live our lives. It's our worldview. It's the way we process everything, including politics, which is why there's a whole branch of Islamic studies called as-siyasa al-shar'iyyah, right, which can loosely be translated as legislative politics or shar'i politics, politics according to the Sharia. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala has a book on the subject. It was explained by Ibn al-Qayyim in al-Turuq al-Hukmiyyah, and it's been a part of Islam from the beginning. How do you set up a hierarchy? Who has to listen to who? Who governs who? How is that done? And unfortunately, I mean, we've been affected by what could be termed the spiritualization of Islam here in America, where Islam has just become about being spiritual and drawing closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through ritual acts of worship, which is no doubt that's a part of Islam. It's the that's the basis of Islam. That's the arkan of Islam. That's not all of Islam. And if we stop there, we're doing ourselves a disservice. We're doing the Muslim ummah a disservice. And for so many of us, for so long, we pushed our kids into sports, eager to see them play soccer, win a basketball game, play football, and not at all have our youth involved in any type of the arts, the martial arts, combat, shooting, archery, and the other things that will prepare them to be able to defend themselves and defend their families, which is an obligation upon the ummah, upon the men of this ummah. Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that there's ijma', that it is upon the men to protect, and this is the word he used, al-harim, which many people think is not fusha, but it is. It's proper Arabic. To protect the women. That's an obligation upon the men. If you're raising your boys to be sports fans and not even know a little bit about how to defend themselves, then this is a disservice. What is absolutely unacceptable is the framing of the American politicians and spokespeople and the school system and people at work and the CEOs of hospitals and everybody else sending out these letters saying how we want moments of silence and we want to take a moment to condemn the terrorist acts against the Israeli citizens, and they go down that list. And subhanAllah, it's like history started on Saturday. It's like history only began when Israeli citizens are hurt. We don't have to go back 75 years to look at the oppression of the Palestinian people and their attempt for resistance. We can go back just not even a generation, from 2008 until now. In Gaza alone, the Israeli forces have killed over 6,400 Palestinians. These are facts. These are not, we're not even getting into subjective. This is objective facts. In 5 major military incursions into Palestinian land, they have killed 6,400 Palestinians. 308 of them have died. Tell you. Where is that condemnation coming from? Where are they condemning the state of Israel for their barbaric killing of Palestinian civilians? 6,400. The majority of them are not combatant people. They're women and children and unarmed men. Where's the condemnation for that? But yet we're required, if we're going to be good Muslims, good citizens of America, you need to condemn the attacks that happened over the weekend. It's a double standard. We shouldn't go for it. We can't go for it. Not as people who want justice. If there's going to be a solution, a peaceful solution, then bring that peaceful side to the table, and it can be a peaceful solution. But if you're going to constantly oppress people, cut off their livelihood, cut off the meat, 53% of people in Gaza live below the poverty line. A third of them in extreme poverty. Difficult to find meals because of the blockades. Because they had put up walls all around. I'm not the one that calls it an open air prison. We don't have to wait for some other Muslims. The former president of the United States, Jimmy Carter, calls it an open air prison. What's being practiced right now in Palestine, in Gaza, has been called apartheid, not by other Muslims, by Human Rights Watch, by Amnesty International, by the UN themselves. And it's interesting to note that this whole Israeli propaganda stuff is here in America. And as soon as you go out, you'll start to see other narratives, which is why the General Secretary of the UN has not only condemned what happened over the weekend against Israeli citizens, but today or yesterday, the Israeli siege of Gaza. He condemned it openly, but you will not find an American politician do that. This is the UN. Because by consensus of international law, what is happening, the occupation of Palestinian land, is illegal. It's illegal by international law. So again, these are all facts. These are not how we feel about it. It is what it is. How should we feel about it? As Muslims, we should be disgusted. However, I do advise that you try to stay away from the images that are circulating, because they're very disturbing. It may lead a person to be very emotional and irrational. And our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam told us that the example of the believers in their mutual love and compassion and empathy that they have for each other and affection that they have for one another is like that of a body. When part of it suffers, then the entirety of the body suffers with sleeplessness and fever. We should feel their pain. This one is different. It's not like what has happened in the past. Something's changing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best what it's going to lead to. And we ask that Allah Azza wa Jal give victory to the Palestinian people and that He free Masjid al-Aqsa from the hands of those who are oppressing it and have taken it as captive. But as a people, we can't be apathetic to stuff like this. Don't just let this stuff go by and say, I don't get involved in politics. SubhanAllah, we're Muslims. It's the plight of Muslim people. And if you're a Muslim, then by virtue of you being a Muslim, that is your life. It's not just what you do in the masjid. It's not just in your buying and your selling. It's not just in your marriage, but it affects every aspect of your life. And I'm not saying that we should go out and everybody start, being busy every day reading about politics and things that really don't concern you, but this does concern us. This does. Wallahu musta'an. Wallahu musta'an. And not to mention, subhanAllah, because of the attention that this has gotten, many of our brothers and sisters are also suffering in Afghanistan from a major earthquake that has killed thousands of people. And Allah knows best, but they say that the count may be higher than what they've initially witnessed. And with that being said, know that Allah Azza wa Jalla is Arhamur Rahimeen, and that He is just, and that justice will be served. If not in this life, then in the next. And that at a bare minimum, and we shouldn't look at it as being something light, make dua for your brothers and sisters in Islam. Not just right now, not just for half a second, but make dua for them for real. Get up before Fajr. Make dua. Like make it for, because Allah Azza wa Jal, in His hand is the dominion, the kingdom. He can change whatever He wills. And it might be your dua that's answered. Don't take it for granted, and make dua. Call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to alleviate the suffering of our people. Wallahu musta'an. Tayyib, inshallah, we're going to read as much as we can of the inner dimensions of Salah by Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala. We began on page 16, so if you can open up your books to page 16. Just want to go back over this beginning part of the book. Dr. Mukhtar, can you read? Jazakallah khair. Just take it from the beginning, inshallah.
Chapter 1, with the name of Allah, the All-Merciful, the Most Merciful. Imam Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, may Allah bestow His mercy upon him, said,
just a quick point here. The Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, la. Abu Bakr himself is Qayyim al-Jawziyah. So there's an extra ibn there, just right, because he is Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, or Ibn al-Qayyim. So Abu Bakr, he is Qayyim al-Jawziyah. He is not Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah. And Abu Bakr was the father of Muhammad. So he's Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, ibn who? Ibn Ayyub. Yeah. Who is it? Yeah, Tayyib. Who's Ibn who? Keep going. Ibn Sa'id. Tayyib. Was born where, by the way? In Damascus, yes. Fadl Shaykh. This is a
discourse on the inclination towards listening to music and songs, versus the affinity to Salah and the Quran.
Okay, so we talked about this point for a second last time, but I just want to go back over it because he says, في الموازنة بين ذوق السماع وذوق الصلاة والقرآن. And I want to make sure that when it says here, listening to music and songs, that you understand that he's not just talking about music and songs as we know them. He's talking about as-sama' specifically. And then we'll talk about today's type of music later on down the line, inshallah. That'll come in the book. And what do we say as-sama' is? What is that? Type of ritual that the Sufis do. Abdurrahman? So that's a literal translation. It's auditioning. Yes. Chanting. Sorry? Like the choir does in the church. That's, yeah, close. A Sufi concert. Tayyib. I mean, that's actually pretty close to.
They try to gain a certain ecstasy, I guess.
Okay. All right. So this is what exactly. So this is what I want you to understand about sama', because it's not just listening to music for no reason, or like somebody's riding in their car listening to music, right? The purpose of sama' has to be understood so that we understand what sama' actually is. So there's another term that I use. Does anybody remember what it is? Wajd. Wow, jeen down. Wajd. And wajd is ecstasy or rapture, a trance-like state, okay, that they enter, whereby they believe that they are experiencing or a divine unitary experience. They have become one. Okay? طيب. So, what is ecstasy? What do you think of when you think of that? Or rapture? Anybody? Yeah.
What we term getting high.
Like getting high. Okay. So it's an altered state that a person enters. You got to understand this. This is not. You got to understand what Ibn al-Qayyim is talking about. What is he doing? He's comparing this to what a person will feel when they actually enter the salat like they're supposed to. And he's saying that what we experience in salat, okay, is much greater than any of this ecstasy or rapture or whatever they're talking about. All right? So understanding this is important. I'm not just going over these concepts just because they're academic terms. All right, so this is a state almost like we talked about, almost like a person who speaks in tongues, okay? When they reach a certain, this is wajd, ecstasy, rapture. It's almost like they get to a state where they don't really realize what's going on around them, okay? They're in their own trance-like state. That's wajd. Now, how do you, this is the objective, by the way. The objective is to get there. This is the objective of those people who do what? Sama'. So their claim is that in order to get to that state, then they have to listen to poetry or chants. Sometimes this is just dhikr, all right? Oftentimes it is accompanied by music, all right? And so it's through, in fact, Allah musta'an. I'm going to mention this not to disparage any particular scholar of Islam, but Al-Ghazali rahimahullah, in Ihya Ulum ad-Din, he has a section called Adab al-Raqsi was-Sama'. Adab al-Raqs was-Sama'. The etiquettes of dancing and as-Sama'. All right, and he lays out, obviously, Al-Ghazali rahimahullah was from the Imams of Tasawwuf, and this is part of their practice. And interestingly enough, and you'll find that Ibn al-Qayyim himself, Shaykh al-Islam, and others benefited a lot from some of his works, but there are other things that, subhanAllah, al-haqqa haqqu an yutaba', right? The truth has more right to be followed. So even if an imam is a great imam in one field, it does not mean that you just take everything that person says about anything. And so he has a whole section about what you have to do in order to reach this state of ecstasy, and how it has to be through music, and it is that this music that connects the infinite to the eternal, yani man to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wallahu musta'an. In any event, so this sama' is, you'll see today when they gather in circles or semicircles, and they'll start a chant, and one of them will chant after the other, and then they might start playing music, and one of them is doing the drums, and one of them is doing flute and whatever, until they create this chorus, okay, that resembles what you may see in the church with the choir. All right? And this is supposed to get them to a state that is different from anything else that they've ever felt, This is supposed to get them connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the problem with this is that they've attributed it to Islam. If they left it out of Islam, it would be their own thing. But attributing it to Islam is a problem because all we want is just one hadith, just one ayah that shows us that the Prophet ﷺ did this with his companions. And they will not find one until Yawm al-Qiyamah. So the Prophet ﷺ did not do that. And Allah Azza wa Jalla says, "Al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati wa raditu lakum al-Islam dina." On this day, Allah Azza wa Jalla perfected or completed his favor upon us, perfected the religion, perfected the deen, and he is pleased with Islam as our deen, as our way of life. As Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala said, فَمَا لَمْ يَكُنْ يَوْمَئِذٍ دِينًا فَلَا يَكُنْ الْيَوْمَ دِينًا. Whatever was not deen on that day is not deen today. And there was none of that happening at the time of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So here he says that we are going to compare a discourse about listening to music and songs versus the affinity to Salah and the Quran. Now, offering a detailed account.
Offering a detailed account of how the experience derived from the Quran and Salah is antithetic to that of music and singing. It will also elucidate the inverse relation between the two inclinations.
All right, put a circle around it. The inverse relation between the two inclinations. That is a very good translation, Allahumma barik.
The inverse relation between the two inclinations?
Yes. What two inclinations? Somebody is inclined towards what? To Sama'. And another person is inclined towards Salah and the Quran. The inverse relationship means what? Right. That the more that you're inclined to that, the less that you're inclined to the other. Nah.
And the manner in which the strength and influence of one necessitates the weakness and ineffectiveness of the other. That is, the stronger the yearning for music and singing is, the weaker shall the attachment to Salah and Quran be.
Nah, tell you. So look at question 1 very quickly here, which is what we started last week. Talk about Ibn al-Qayyim's book called Al-Kalam ala Masalat al-Sama', treatise on the issue of Sama'. What does the word of Sama' refer to? Okay, we're clear on that? All right, and when you talk about Sama', there's another word that you need to include in there, which is wajd. Wajd. B, what is the author comparing in this work? He's comparing what? The Salah and the Sama', right. Or the inclination of one to Salah as opposed to the inclination of one to a Sama'. And C is, did he write a book titled Inner Dimensions of Prayer? And the correct opinion, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, is that he did not, that this is in fact a chapter in another book called Al-Kalam ala Mas'alat al-Sama'. And as for the book that they have called Asrar as-Salah by Ibn al-Qayyim, then it is just a title that they have put on this particular chapter. Okay. The next question, have all of you had the chance to read the questions, by the way? طيب. Fadal Sheikh.
The Salah is tranquility for worshippers and Allah's gift to the believers. It is imperative for you to know that Salah is, without any doubt, the domain of tranquility for devotees. Muhibbeen, the enjoyment of the souls of monotheists, muwahhideen, the garden of the worshippers, abideen, the essence of enjoyment of the humble ones, khashi'een, the test of the sincere ones, sadiqeen, and the scale measuring the mettle of those embarking upon the right path, sadiqeen. It is true.
So stop there. So I want you to write this down somewhere. So Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala is explaining here that a salah is enjoyed by a certain group of people. There's an enjoyment that comes with salah. Okay? So he talks about the muhibbeen and the muwahideen and the abideen, right? But the point that he's getting to here is that salah is enjoyed. And the second thing that he wants to point out is that it is a scale and it's a test. It's a scale by which a person can measure their own devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't look further than your salah. Don't look to your zakat and your sadaqah or how many times you've made. Look at your salah. The salah is the mahak. The salah is that balance. When he says balance, he's talking about mizan, scale, by which a person measures their devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he talks about it being an enjoyment, and he talks about it being a scale. Yes, keep going.
It is truly a divine mercy that Allah has gifted to his believing servants that he has guided them to and acquainted with them. He delegated his truthful and honest messenger, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, to deliver this gift to his believing servants in order that they may attain a noble status with him. Through its means, he dignifies, honors, and showers them with his mercy and allows them to win his nearness. He bestows upon his believing servants all this, although he is in no need of them. He just wants to lavish them with this gracious gift to show his favor upon them and bring their hearts and bodies together, all together, into his servitude.
Okay, so go up in the middle of the paragraph. He says he delegated his truthful and honest message of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ to deliver this gift to his believing servants. Why do you think that he mentions that he delegated this gift to the Prophet ﷺ to deliver to his servants? It's because you should not worship Allah Azza wa Jal on your terms. You worship Allah on his terms. The salat that was gifted to us by way of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was a salat that is obligated 5 times a day. And for it to have the effect that it is supposed to have, for example, salat preventing one from fahsha and munkar, falling into evil and obscene deeds, a person has to preserve the salat the way that the Prophet ﷺ brought it to the ummah. Not you pray any old kind of way. Not that you pray whenever you want to pray or however you want to pray, but you pray the way that the Prophet ﷺ taught us to pray. Question number 2, before we move on. I had to read question number 2 out loud. You need a paper? Further, Sheikh. Further. We got some more. We got more. It's more where that came from. Anybody need a paper? Dawood, can you pass that back? That's the same one. The long version is the same as this one. Read question number 2.
There is a word that Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah, repeats several times in the first paragraph to describe Salah. What is that word?
All right, we just read the first paragraph. What word is repetitious here that Ibn al-Qayyim used to describe the Salah? Nah, say it louder. Gift. Ibn al-Qayyim, rahmatullah alayhi, describes salah as being a gift. I want you to add this to the other 2 things that we talked about. That salah is what? It's an enjoyment, right? It's the delight. It's a joy. And it's also what? A scale by which we measure our devotion. And he says that it is a gift from the All-Merciful. And he talks about him. He says through his mercy we can get closer to him. Allah isn't in need of them, but he wants them to lavish in this great gift and his favor upon them, and so on and so forth. If we understand the salah in light of this, as I don't want us to miss this point, because he's starting this book off this way for a reason. And we talked about Ibn al-Qayyim rahmatullah alayhi. We talked about Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah being someone who clearly enjoyed his salah and reached the highest stations in this field. So him choosing to start this book off this way is actually important. I don't want us to understand it. I want us to kind of like think about this for a little bit, inshallah. But I don't want to break down on the groups because that's going to take too long, and we got that coming up, inshallah. So how can this change the way that we view prayer in general? How can this possibly change the way that we view the salat? Raise your hand, Dawood. Raise your hand. He raised his hand first. Go ahead, Ahmed.
So instead of it being something that's obligatory or a burden, now it's a gift from Allah.
So instead of looking at it as a burden, right, we begin to look at it as a gift. Dawood, you had something else? Anybody else? Fadda.
When you receive a gift, it's something that you enjoy.
Uh-huh.
You tend to look at that thing differently than.
So when you receive a gift that you enjoy, you tend to look at it differently, huh?
To know that you honor from Allah for allowing us to have that gift.
To know that you've been honored by Allah to have that. No?
You run towards a gift. Like
You run towards a gift, Gertrude.
You preserve the gift.
You preserve the gift.
Gift is something that you didn't do yourself. It's someone gave it to you.
Somebody gave it to you. All right, let's take it. I want us to think about something. I want us to think in light of this. These things that Ibn Qayyim, because all of what you mentioned is true, alhamdulillah. But there's something a little different I'm hoping that we understand, because and Allah knows best, but I think this is what Ibn Qayyim is trying to get us to realize here. I think he's trying to get us to realize the value of salat, right? And there's a reason why that makes a difference. All right. Somebody goes up to Canal Street, right, and they get a Rolex for $20. Right? When they go make wudu, they taking that Rolex off and leaving it on a wudu station? Huh? It's $20. They don't care, man. They put it on a wudu station, right? Makes wudu, he forgot about it. Somebody tells him that. He's like, man, I'm not going back to get that. All right. Now, somebody brings him back a Rolex from Switzerland or whatever they make. Where they make Rolexes anyway? Switzerland. It's a $50,000 Rolex.
That's cheap.
That's the cheap one? All right. I don't know nothing about this stuff, man, but okay. $50,000 Rolex. Say, Fadlan, Akhi, this is yours. I love you, man. And now you know that this is a valuable watch. Huh? It's a valuable watch. And you gonna make wudu. Allahu alam if you even take it off. Huh? You might just say, nah, it's gonna get in there. It's cool. The water's gonna get down. And if you do, you're definitely not leaving it on the wudu station. That's going in your pocket, right? You might go lock it up in a safe in your car or something like that. Why? Because you value it. You value it, right? Same thing, a ring that's not real gold, right, with a cubic zirconia in it, right? Person's not going to treat that the same way that they treat something set in 18 karat, with the biggest diamonds you can find. They're going to treat it differently. Why? Because they value it. Ibn Qayyim, rahmatullah alayhi, in this first paragraph, is trying to get us, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, he's trying to get us to value the salat. Because if you value it, you'll preserve it. If you value it, you'll approach it differently. Right? So understand that part. I think the other part, and it comes off a little better in the Arabic than it does in the English, but it is what it is. I mean, it's difficult to make everything come out. But part of what it seems to be is that he wants us also to know a little bit more about the one that we're standing in front of, the one whom we're praying to. So listen to what he says. He says that it is a truly divine mercy that Allah has gifted his believing servants. Who are you standing in front of? You're standing in front of Allah, who has given you this gift from his mercy. So he's merciful, subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? He repeats that again. Through its means, he dignifies, honors, and showers them with his mercy. He wants us to understand that. He wants us to want to draw near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of his mercy. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Anyway, I didn't want us to lose that point and just read. It's very beautiful. When you read it in Arabic, and again, this actually is a decent translation, alhamdulillah. But obviously you can't catch everything. And so I wanted to just stop there to make sure that we got some of that, inshallah. Naam, Shaykh, keep reading.
Even as Allah tested his servants by creating them with innate lust and desires, shahwa, and exposing them in external temptation.
No. He the most exalted endows the heart. The second paragraph, Shaykh. Page 17, but the second paragraph.
He the most exalted?
Yes.
He the most exalted endows the heart of the knower of Allah by enabling him to reap the best of its harvest. Turning to him, exalted be he, rejoicing in his closeness, basking in his love, enjoying standing before him in salah, dismissing everything except him from his heart. As soon as he commences worship and fulfilling the rights of his servitude to him, inwardly and outwardly, in order for his worship to be in a manner that pleases Allah.
Okay, so he's going to repeat some of this later on, but I don't want you to get past this paragraph without highlighting this point where he says, enjoying standing before him in salah, dismissing everything except him. Right? So, when a person stands in salah, the way that they are going to taste its sweetness is by really believing Allahu Akbar. Right? And subhanAllah, just as a person may forget that they should be focused solely on Allah Azza wa Jal, you're reminded, Allahu Akbar. Like, there's a reason why Allahu Akbar is repeated in the salah. Because when you first say Allahu Akbar, which means what? Allah is? Greater. Right. Then it just leaves it as Akbar, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is greater than everything. So whatever it is that's busy in your mind, Allah is Akbar than that. And whatever you got coming up next, Allah is Akbar than that. Allah is greater than that. And he should be bigger in your eyes than that. Right? And whatever it is, whether it's material or whether it is emotional or whether it is based on relationships, Allah is Akbar. And when you say Allahu Akbar, that is your reminder that leave all that stuff alone and focus. Right? Focus on that. And that's why he says dismissing everything except him. And in the Arabic, he mentions something similar. I don't know him. Okay. Now, قال القيام له بالعبودية عن الالتفات إلى غير معبودي. Right. So your focus is strictly on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you turn away from everything else except for the one whom you are worshiping subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now,
Even as Allah tested his servants by creating them with innate lust.
so real quick, even as, you want to say something like, because Allah tested his servants. Even as doesn't really fit here. Now,
Because Allah tested his servants by creating them with innate lust and desires, shahwa, and exposing them to external temptations, his mercy and kindness mandated that Allah, the Most High, give his servants a feast, that is, salah, comprising of several kinds of delicacies, nourishments, gifts, and grants to help them repel these desires and temptations.
all right. So notice here, Allahu Akbar, yani, Ibn al-Qayyim, this is poetic in nature. And you got to understand what he's saying. So he talks about al-ma'daba, which is a banquet, okay? He calls it here a feast. But think about it in terms of, it is a feast. Banquet, feast, kind of plays into each other. So here, he's saying that there's these internal lusts and desires that you have, that everybody has. He created us that way. Then there are things that happen externally that may also stir those desires. And so Allah Azza wa Jal, gave us something that we can even desire more, okay, which is the salat itself, that also, as he'll talk about, also serves to expiate for any of the sins that a person may have committed because of answering the call of those lowly desires. All right. So this salat is in itself a banquet. It is a feast, and it has all types of courses. Right. You think about basically he's laying out here a 4-course meal. Right. He calls it delicacies and nourishments and gifts and grants. Right. But you're talking about, like, you know, your appetizers and your soup and your salad and the main course and your dessert. Like, all of this is laid out for you now.
And he did invite them to attend this banquet on a daily basis, not once, but 5 times a day. And he distinguished each served course of this banquet, that is, the actions of Salah.
So notice he's talking about this. This is a feast. This is a banquet, and in different courses, right? We talk about a 4-course meal, 5-course meal. Each course is distinguished with a unique flavor. The takbir has its flavor. Ruku' has its flavor. Sujood has its flavor. Qiyam has its flavor, right? Now,
with a unique flavor and special benefit to perfect the pleasures and complement the benefits they attain.
Yani, think about it like this. In Qiyam, what are you doing majority of the time in Qiyam? Reciting the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That has its own flavor. Ruku', what are you doing? Sorry? Glorifying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by bowing. All right, so what happens when someone else wants you to do what they want you to do? It's basically like they're asking you to bow to them. You're supposed to, because bowing is showing that level of respect. That means I will follow you. Like, and this is why in the martial arts, which is we should not do as Muslims, but the way they do it as kuffar, what do they do before with their master? They bow, letting them know, I'm going to follow you, whatever you tell me, even though I don't understand it. That bowing is for Allah Azza wa Jalla alone, and that's something that we reminded every time we go into ruku'. I will never bow to anything else as a Muslim. And your sujood, that's the closest you are to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You should be calling upon Allah Azza wa Jalla in your sujood like you do no other time. Begging Allah Azza wa Jalla. And when you beg Allah Azza wa Jalla, you know what happens? You don't even feel like asking anybody else. You ask the King of Kings. You ask Al-Ghani, Al-Hamid. There's nobody else to ask. SubhanAllah. Each part of Salah has its own flavor, which we'll cover, inshallah. We'll get there. Now.
With the unique flavor and special benefit to perfect the pleasures and complement the benefits they attain, and help them to perfect their ubudiyah to Allah. Thus, not only did he make every act of worship performed in Salah a means of remedy to atone for the minor sins they committed, but rewarded them with a special light for praying.
All right, so here, just cross out where it says for praying. Okay? Because if we go back over this sentence, so we understand it, he says, thus not only did he make every act of worship performed in Salah. So what he's talking about when he says every act of worship performed in the Salah, what are we talking about here? Huh? In the Salah. Okay, right. Whether that's azkar as-salah, whether that's you saying takbir, whether that's your qiyam, whether that's your ruku', whether that's your sujood, whether that's your jalsa, whatever it might be. These are the acts in the salah. Each one of them, he says, each one of them atones. Okay, now atones for a sin that a person may have committed, and each one of them comes with this special light. Each one of those acts, not for praying, but for doing that specific act in the prayer. Father Sheikh, in fact,
Salah brings forth light and strength into the heart. Allah increases the share of one's provision in this life, inspires others to love Mahabbat, the one who prays, and lets angels and also the earth with its mountains, trees, and rivers rejoice. Furthermore, on the day of judgment, When the believing servants of Allah meet their Lord, their salah shall turn into light and transform into reward.
And the Prophet ﷺ said in no uncertain terms, As-salatu nur. Prayer is light in this life and the next. In this life and the next. Now,
before attending the feast, their hearts endured starvation, thirst, and nakedness. But as soon as they commence the prayer, that is salah, all that shall change to become the opposite. Hence they shall leave the feast with stomachs full, throats moistened, and bodies are tired. Clothed, in other words.
now. Keep going, Sheikh.
The likeness of the heart to the earth. Due to the sterility and poverty of indolence, disaffection, and idleness, etc., that the heart's qulub and soul's nufus endure time and time after, the invitation is renewed 5 times a day.
Right. So in other words, what he's saying here is that the heart is often overcome with negligence, heedlessness, apathy. And so because of that, the call is repeated. So just when it starts to dry up, you're called back to salat again. All right? It's the hikmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Naam, Shaykh.
However, the mercy of Allah necessitated that a gap of time pass between each invitation, so the invitee is constantly calling for the rain from the one in whose hand is the water to quench the hearts, and beseeching the clouds of his mercy to have their water descend upon his heart, in order that the trees of Iman and the harvest of Ihsan growing from this divine mercy, that is Salah, does not dry out.
Mm-hmm.
The essence of these plants maintains their survival. Give me a second. This computer jumped on me. I messed up, man.
لا فضل Shaykh.
Okay. Do not dry out. The essence of these plants maintains their survival in his heart, qalb, and his soul, ruh. Therefore, the heart of the abd of Allah continues to implore in humility for the rain to fall upon his heart from his Lord, and invoke him to relieve his heart from drought and thirst. This truly, for the abd of Allah, is the way of life.
All right. So he calls this the way of life. Somebody take 30 seconds. I want all of you, just take 30 seconds, look back over this, summarize it. Tell me, what is he saying here? How is,
Paragraph.
huh? This last paragraph, not you though, Shaykh. Everybody else. Take 30 seconds, look over it, and then give me a summary. What is he saying here? No, you ain't raise your hand, Kareem. Okay, anybody ready? Kareem, go ahead.
He's saying that all of those parts of, or the dimensions inside of the code, and those things are partly where the feast comes from. Like in those dimensions, that's where you're eating at. That's what you're filling up.
Okay. Ahmed.
The heart is poor and Allah feeds it through the salah.
The heart is poor, and Allah feeds it through the salah. Thanks. Go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, just like a tree needs water, your soul needs. So the salah is like the water to your soul.
So the
Which
salah.
feeds the iman and
Yeah. Okay. All right. We getting. That's where I wanted to go with this one. Yeah.
Between every salah, your heart drops.
Okay.
And the
Perfect.
is the means to
Perfect. So this is what we're gonna do right now. I want you all to take out your masahif, your translations of the Quran, if you have them. Go to Surah Al-Hadid. I have no idea which ayat it is, but I'll tell you in a second.
Yeah. 27.
Yeah? So, I mean, if you have the Arabic one, it's the, after the first half a page, it's the second page. So it's ayah Allah. Yeah, okay. So we're looking at ayah 16 and 17. Ayah 16, 17, Surah Al-Hadid. Type, somebody want to read it?
The translation.
You can read the translation, Father. Just say it real loud, real loud.
Has the time not come for those who have believed that their hearts should be humbly submissive at the remembrance of Allah and what has come down of the truth?
Okay, stop right there. That what becomes submissive? Their hearts. Okay, أَلَمْ يَأْنِ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَن تَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. That the hearts become humbled at the remembrance of Allah.
And let them not be like those who were given the scripture below or before,
Mhm.
and a long period passed over them, so their hearts hardened.
Okay, so why did their hearts become hard over a period of time? Because the revelation, what? There was a long span between the revelation and their hearts. So that the hearts weren't being nourished through revelation. And so he describes them as becoming hard. Hard, what happens when things dry up? They get hard. Yeah, go ahead.
And many of them are defiantly disobedient. Know that Allah gives life to the earth after its lifeless.
He said, no doubt, Allah, اعلموا أن الله what? يحيي الأرض بعد موتها. Allah brings life to the earth after it has died. Allah brings life to these hearts even after they have dried up. Even after they become hard. Allah gives them life. So Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala here is talking about the life of the heart through salat. And what happens, subhanAllah, and if you think of it like a tree, right? You can't water a tree constantly, it'll drown. Like there's a time it actually needs to not be watered, right? Sprinkler systems, they set them up at what? At certain times, because you can't just constantly water something and expect it's not gonna respond properly. And so subhanAllah, just as the heart is in need of more water, boom, you call back to that salah, right? Just as it's in need of being watered by Allah Azza wa Jalla. He calls them Saha'ib al-Rahmah, the clouds of mercy. And I mean, you just think about it. They're clouds of mercy, and when they explode, then that mercy descends upon the heart. SubhanAllah. So this is Ibn al-Qayyim rahmatullahi alayhi, comparing the heart to the earth and the salat to the water which nourishes the heart. And obviously you can't pray salat without reciting the Quran. And so here it is a constant reminder of revelation, which is what in Surah Al-Hadid Allah Azza wa Jalla is referring to as i'lamu anna Allah yuhyi al-ard, as what brings life to the earth after it has died. Now, keep going. Indeed,
the drought of hearts is heedlessness, ghafla. But as long as the abd of Allah is indulged in the remembrance of Allah and constantly turning to Him, the rains of His mercy will shower his heart abundantly. As soon as he becomes heedless, however, drought shall strike his heart, and the damage caused will be according to the degree of his heedlessness. This is because when inadvertency dominates and overwhelms the heart, its land becomes lifeless.
Pay attention to this. So what happens once the drought dominates, right? It's different than there's a drought, like you go 3 weeks without some rain, like here. They tell you stop using the hose or stop washing your car or whatever, and then khalas, then everything kind of goes back to normal. But if it goes on for too long, everything changes. Everything changes, right? He says, and this is because when ghafla dominates, the ghafla is this heedlessness and advertency. When it dominates and overwhelms the heart, then the land becomes lifeless. Nothing is growing at this point. Yeah.
It shall produce no harvest for reaping, and the fire of desires will scorch it from every side.
And I love the way that he talks about desires, shahwa, as the fire of desires, as the passion, right? These are those, because that's how it comes. And it leads to the fire as well, right? So thinking of it as the fire of desires actually is very helpful. Now,
leaving the land bare after it had once been rich with every different kind of vegetation. Nonetheless, as soon as the rains of mercy fall upon the heart of the abd of Allah, The land of his iman and deeds quivers, turns fertile, causing every lovely kind to grow thereon, sustained and nourished by the life-giving water. When the land is deprived of water, the branches and leaves of its flora wither away, becoming fruitless. Even the branches are bereft of benefit as they become rigid and fragile. At this juncture, the wisdom of the one overseeing this garden dictates having these dry trees cut and making it wood a fuel for fire.
Don't like put a circle around that, because this is wisdom. And sometimes, subhanAllah, yani, in any event, a person does not question what Allah Azza wa Jal does. وَلَا يُسْأَلُ عَمَّا يَفْعَلُ وَهُمْ يُسْأَلُونَ. Allah Azza wa Jal will not be asked about why he does what he does. And they will be asked, every human being. But here, subhanAllah, this imagery that Ibn al-Qayyim provides for that heart that is dried up so bad, and it does not turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in its salah, and it is not being watered, and khalas, it has absolutely no more benefit at this point because it is totally dried up. He says that the wisdom of the one overseeing the garden, if this was your garden and there was just this tree that was dead at this point, why leave it standing there? It's better to use it as firewood. Hence that heart becomes fuel for the fire. Waliyadu billah. Nah. Istamir, nah.
The heart becomes dry when devoid of tawheed. Similarly, is the case with the heart of the abd of Allah. It becomes dry whenever it is devoid of 1, love, hubb for Allah. 2, knowledge about Him. 3, His remembrance, dhikr. 4, supplication and invocation. 5, most importantly, tawheed.
And in the Arabic, he starts with tawheed. So I'm not sure why the translation they restructured it. But if you look at question 3, you should be able to answer that now. Look at question 3. And look at question 4. Hearts experience drought due to what? Due to ghafla. Due to ghafla. And begin to dry up when they are devoid of the 5 things here mentioned on page 20, is this? Yes, mentioned on page 20. So just fill that in later, inshallah ta'ala. We're going to just finish to the end of this page, or to the end of this section, and then we'll stop, inshallah. This is because the heart, the heat of desire. Follow, Shaykh.
The heat of desire.
This is because the heat of desire. After the 5 things that he mentions.
Okay, this is because the heat of desire, nafs, and the fires of lust, shahwa, infiltrating the heart causes the branches, that is the limbs, to become unresponsive, inflexible, and inert. Whenever they act
So this is actually, subhanAllah, and I don't want to go too far into this, but this is actually why the majority of the Salaf consider those who do not pray to be kuffar. Because if there was something in the heart, if there was enough in the heart to be considered beneficial iman, then they would pray something. The fact that they're not praying anything is an indication that the heart is dead and does not have the iman that benefits. And why I say the iman that benefits? Because Allah Azza wa Jalla talked about وَمَا يُؤْمِنُ أَكْثَرُهُمْ بِاللَّهِ إِلَّا وَهُمْ مُشْرِكُونَ. That the majority of them don't have iman billah, except that they are also what? That they are mushrikun. So there's a level of iman that people have. They believe Allah exists. This does not benefit them. This does not bring them into the fold of Islam. That level of iman. So here, as he says, this is because the heat of desire and the fires of lust infiltrating the heart cause the branches to become unresponsive. Why isn't a person praying? If you claim to be a Muslim, why are you not praying something inflexible and inert? Why? Because the heart is actually dead. Now,
I'll let you read the Arabic. I don't understand.
it says, under these circumstances, the tree, including its branches, is rendered useless. Its only fitting use is as fuel for fire. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, فَوَيْلٌ لِلْقَاسِيَةِ قُلُوبُهُم مِّن ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ أُولَٰئِكَ فِي ضَلَالٍ مُّبِينٍ.
Then woe unto those whose hearts are hardened against remembrance of Allah. Such are in plain error. When the heart is watered with the rains of mercy, the branches will be soft, moist, pliable, and responsive. If you call them for the worship of Allah, they submit and hasten to obey, letting you reap from each branch the fruits of true enslavement to Allah, whose essence is the irrigation of the heart, which influences the functioning of the heart and the limbs. On the other hand, when the heart is parched and dry, that is rigid and hardened, the branches do not perform any good deeds because the essence of life is missing from the heart. Thus, the limbs are cut off from life accordingly. And even though each limb has been created and prepared to render a unique act of worship, demonstrating an aspect of mankind's servitude to Allah, the limbs cannot produce their anticipated harvest due to the incapacity and hindrance in their function.
And the Prophet ﷺ said, أَلَا إِنَّ فِي الْجَسَدِ مُضْغَةً إِذَا صَلَحَتْ صَلَحَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ وَإِذَا فَسَدَ فَسَدَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ أَلَا وَهِيَ الْقَلْبُ. The Prophet ﷺ, emphasizing the importance of the heart, said that in the body there is a piece of flesh. If it is righteous, it is upright, it is salih, sound, then all of the body will be sound. And if it is corrupt, then all of the body will be corrupt, and that is the heart. And so Ibn al-Qayyim here in the very beginning of this book did not start by talking about how you should pray facing the Qibla. He's trying to get us to understand the function of the heart, the importance of the heart in all of this, and by valuing the salat. And if we value the salat, then bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, we will approach it differently and we will preserve the salat. هذا والله أعلم وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. I would advise you all, please try to read about 10 pages in advance. Try to understand what you're reading, because it's going to bi'idhnillahi ta'ala help when we come back next week. Inshallah ta'ala, it'll help us move through the book a little bit more quickly. بإذن الله تعالى وجزاكم الله خيرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.